today's talk is called Zealicious. Isn't that a fun word? I don't know if it had ever been spoken before until I heard Reverend Paul Hasselbeck say it a couple weeks ago when we were in Dallas together, but I was like, aha, that is a word for me, Zealicious. And so today's theme is about the power of zeal. And zeal's also been known as enthusiasm and some other things, but I like zeal. It's a cool word because it's got a Z in there, maybe because it's a high Scrabble word. That's one of the reasons I like it. I mean, enthusiasm's long, so I guess you get a lot of points for that too, but Z, you know. And the color for zeal is? Must be orange. Well done. And the 12 powers, I have a new thing to describe the 12 powers. You ready? The 12 powers are like a Swiss Army knife. Like one of the ones that has a whole lot of them, not just one of those wussy little 7 things, but one of the ones that have a whole bunch, right? Because so that's all made out of the same thing. It's all the same metal that makes the Swiss Army knife. But sometimes you need a screwdriver, and sometimes you need the little saw, and sometimes you need the tweezers, etc., 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 right? You need different things. The 12 powers are like that. They're all made of the same thing. They're just different ways for us to use our inner Christ or our God abilities. Different ways to look at and explore them. You like that? So yeah. And so zeal has been described as like rocket fuel. And when you think about zeal, you think about high-powered, enthusiastic type of stuff, right? Think of zeal like that. And the problem with zeal sometimes is it's sort of like a 2-stage rocket where you get really going, whoosh, and then once you've blasted through the atmosphere, figuratively, then sometimes zeal kind of leaves you hanging. Because enthusiasm sometimes can only get you so far if it's just fueled by enthusiasm. And so, in Paul Hasselbeck's book, Power Up, he'll say you need strength, the power of strength, to keep you going. Not strength like Hulk strength, but that strength of tenacity and consistency to keep that goes together. You see how that might pair well with enthusiasm. In Divine Audacity by Linda Martella Whitsitt, she says, understanding and wisdom are good pairers for your zeal, so that you might, well, this is what she said. Energy is not good or bad, any of our powers, not good or bad. Exuberance by itself is not a sign of wielding our power of zeal. Zeal must be tempered by understanding and wisdom. So she's saying, you know, just being excited about something isn't necessarily using our power of zeal, but that there's a deeper use for it. And there's another part of that. So all of the 12 powers have sort of they have a buddy. That, I mean, we use just, you know, like the Swiss Army knife, we may need the screwdriver, but then to do the same thing, we may have to turn around and use another thing on it, right? We're going to need to use them all. We can't use them all at the Swiss Army knife, you can't use them all at the time, but the powers you can. Hey. So zeal is placed right here on the back of the neck. And you know what's right on the front of the neck? It's power. Power is our ability to speak, to have mastery over our world, in part by what we say. And so I think if you just think about that for a moment, I can start to see how those powers go together really well. Because when we have enthusiasm, we speak with enthusiasm. And whether we use our enthusiasm to rally people to, change the world in a positive way, we can also use that same enthusiasm and power coupling to rally really some not so great things, right? You can use it any way you want to use it, but they do certainly go together. And so we use all of our powers, but of course today we're talking about zeal, through whatever filter we have to use them through our own consciousness, our own experiences is how we use our power of zeal through. So one example in one of the books is if we were using zeal from maybe not the most conscious place, we might be really, have you ever been like really excited about the newest book you got, the newest spiritual book you got? This is the one. And then next month there's a new one. Oh my gosh, this is the one. And you go and you tell all your friends and you buy a copy and you do the thing and you do it over and over and over and over again, but you never take it. You're really excited about it and it touches some truth in you, which is great. But then you don't take it deeper because you're using zeal kind of on a very surface level and enthusiasm. I've also seen people do this with diets. This is the one. This is the one. This is the one that's going to change my life. And then, then you read this other thing, and now this is the one. This is the one, right? So there's a lot of enthusiasm going on, but not a lot of wisdom maybe going on to temper that, balance those two. The enthusiasm, wisdom knows, oh yeah, maybe we should look at this in a bigger context. And how does that fit into what I already know? Whether we're talking about diets or spiritual books or whatever we're talking about, right? Understanding would help us see that bigger picture as well. Strength would help us say, well, we've made a choice. I'm going to stick with it long enough to see it through instead of hopping off onto the next thing that I'm excited about. It's hard. Maybe in our youth, I may have felt the same way about a few boyfriends too, but anyway. It was a very enthusiastic. I'm an enthusiastic person, you know that. So it's also important to know what's ours to do and what's not ours to do, and tuning into that inner fire within us. I like to say that. Use inner fire as another word to describe enthusiasm. And so when we tune into that, we know what's ours to do and what's not ours to do. Many years ago, when I was working, when I was just a volunteer with the young adults in Unity, and we had a group of people doing a lot of stuff, one of the people on our team was really fired up about doing this newsletter. It was an e-newsletter even then, but it was still there. This was something that she thought we needed to do, and she gathered articles for it, and she did all the stuff to make it happen and all of that. And then life happened and she stepped away from the team, and it was like, okay, who's going to do the newsletter? And nobody on the team really wanted to do the newsletter. Nobody was really, we hadn't had a whole bunch of people fired up about getting the newsletter or anything, and I just don't think there was anybody who really cared about the newsletter, except for the person who had just left our team. And we came to the conclusion that if nobody was fired up about doing the newsletter, let's not do it. There was no requirement that we were to do it. And if somebody did take it on, it would be begrudgingly, not with joy. So we didn't do it. And you know what? It didn't matter. Because other things, we were able to use our enthusiasm to do other things that filled needs, and if we believed and trusted that if it was needed to be done, then somebody would have shown up to do it. And so Linda Martella-Whitsett in her book Divine Audacity says that she lays out 3 aspects of zeal, and that's enthusiasm, audaciousness, and devotion. So enthusiasm, well, I shared with you what it looks like not to be enthusiastic, and that's the newsletter. But you know, when you are enthusiastic about something, you keep with it. You use that power of strength to keep you tenaciously on the path. Audaciousness is being not confined by the expectations of the world. Audaciousness says, this is my thing to do, and I'm going to do it, darn it. I'm going to do it, even if all y'all say that I couldn't do it, or I shouldn't do it, or whatever they want to say about it. I'm reading biographical history of some of the first women aviators. And I haven't got to the part where they really start doing awesome stuff yet. They're just still, where I'm in the book. But there was a lot of, well, we don't think ladies should be doing that. But they did it anyway, obviously, because they're in the book, even though I haven't got to that part yet. And that's part of what being audacious is about, but it's also much smaller things about those parts of our lives where, well, just because I am, or I have in the past done this or that or the other thing, or I fit in this category, check off this box, does that mean that that's always where I should be, if that's what's calling me to be something different? Audaciousness is that part of zeal that says, this is mine to do, and I am going to do it. Even if they poo-poo it. So what? So what? And then devotion is the next part, and that's that single focusedness. It's not maybe a word, but anyway, being single focused. Devotion, we think of spiritual devotion, which is a wonderful thing to have, as far as the doing it every day, sticking to whatever your spiritual practice is. We know from experience, from people telling us, from scientific research studies, all of this all say that when you're consistent with your spiritual practice, then your brain changes, things change, right? We know this, and sometimes it doesn't, and that's not enough to keep us on the path, right? But it's okay, because we'll come back. But single focused, I'm going to make it into a word, I'm going to do it. Being single focused is about being in this moment and being present with whatever's going on in this moment. And for all the different other things that I could think of, what always comes back to me is this dog Cody that I house sat for, dog sat. Cody loved his ball. And he loved for you to throw his ball. And if it were he had his way, he would spend every waking hour of the day going after his ball and bringing it back, and going after his ball and bringing it back, and that was all that he was interested in doing. He was so single focused. And he was a great dog, because he didn't really give you a hard time if you were like, I gotta do other things, dude. He was okay with that. But really, he was sitting there with his ball, ready to go. He was devoted. Totally present moment devoted to what was his to do. Now, hopefully, most of us have maybe higher aspirations than chasing after a tennis ball, but I'm not going to judge. But there's something inspiring in that to me, because that level of being present is not something that you see a lot of in the way that our world is. There's always something else looking for our attention. And so whether it's our spiritual practice that we have our devotion to, or doing the dishes, or, you know, making organizational things happen in our, whatever it is that we're having, that single focusedness, I'm gonna make it into a word, is gonna take us somewhere. And that is another way for zeal to show up, because we think of zeal as that, like I said at the beginning, that rocket fuel, that's something that's big and loud and sort of like the color orange, right? It's, but it's also the inner fire. It's that ember of light that keeps shining through whatever else is going on. That's also our power of zeal and enthusiasm. That consistency. You see, there's some really good stuff in that. That's a lot more than, you know, jazz hands. Not to say that that's not bad. I mean, I like jazz hands. But that authentic spiritual practice, that devotion, devotedness, that audaciously looking beyond what is expected into what's really calling us. When we do those things, that's how we power our rocket into this next stage. Beyond the enthusiasm of the next great spiritual book, which might indeed have the key to what you need to know, if you decide to turn it and keep walking through the door. Or the next great diet plan may actually be the key, if you have the tenacity and the continued juice to keep doing it, to stick with it. You see, enthusiasm, like I said, is a great starter. But we have to take it deeper into that devotion place for it to be that inner fire that keeps burning through the I don't want to's of life. Anybody had the I don't want to's of life? So that is today's version, because next time we do zeal, I'll have a different version, I'm sure. But that's today's version of the power of zeal. So go out there and be zealicious in all the ways that you might express your power of zeal.